Hello, BookTube. Well, the dreaded day has finally arrived. I said over and over again that this channel would never reach 14K, and we did. In fact, we shot right past it. We didn't loiter around at 14.1 or 2. So I put out a call for questions, and once again, I got bombarded with questions, including, as you're going to hear, a lot of people who are new to the channel. So that's fun. So I thought I would do these in a series of videos. I'll cut off each video at around 30 minutes, and I ported all the questions over from YouTube, and I had to clean them up in the process. I didn't read them, really, because, I knew what I was looking for to clean them up. Emojis, avatars, the little notations that YouTube puts on comments. I didn't want to be reading those out loud by accident, so I cleaned up all of that stuff. But if in the process I dropped your question, don't take it personally. It's not censorship. Just ask the next time. So we're going to start with Aaron Hook. Congratulations on reaching 14K. I've got two questions for you. Number one, what are some of the most enjoyable biographies or histories which are complete hatchet jobs on the topic they cover? Well, the one that I always think about here is an author named William Marvel wrote a book called Lincoln's Autocrat about Lincoln's Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton. And I got the book from the publisher, and I thought, oh, well, all right, let's see what this is. I wasn't 30 pages in before I realized that the author hates Stanton, really hates him. And I thought, all right, well, this is the introduction and his childhood, which is boring anyway. Surely you will warm to him. Why would you write a 400-page biography of the guy if you hate him? But no, it kept going from the whole of the book. Stanton never gets a break from this author, never. And when I was done with the book, I thought, well, I have to capture this in a review. This is too fun not to do. So I wrote a review that is one of the funniest reviews I've ever written. All about that. All about the fact that the review just tears him apart. And I ran it on Open Letters Monthly, and the author wrote in. He left a comment on the review. When I saw his name, I thought, oh my God, well, I was having fun in the review, and authors are known for their sense of humor, so this could be bad. But his comment was, not only is this the best review that I have ever received, it's the best review of anything that I have ever read. So he got the joke. He got the joke. I was worried because at the end of the review I said that this is the only biography I've ever read of a subject that is authoritative and fully researched, and yet actually increases the demand for a new biography of the same subject by somebody else. And then question number two is, how surly is the surly houseboy? He is so surly that with very little provocation, he would probably call you a chode. Then not Ure, says, we've made it this far. Congratulations to all of us, and to Steve, of course. That is not a question, nor is it a compliment. James Rucala says, congratulations on 14K. You've mentioned teaching literature. Where did you teach, and for how long? Did you also teach writing? I did teach writing, yes. And all of these things were ad hoc. I was never actually on any kind of staff. It would be a friend has a problem, and they've got a teaching gig, and they need somebody to step in. And I'm ready to do that. I am ready to talk to an auditorium of young people at any time, including a friend of mine who got a lecturing gig in Hawaii, and he knew about it only on paper. And then on the first week, he walked into the auditorium where he was going to be talking about Introduction to Mythology, and the empty seats just rose all the way up, and it completely froze his blood. Completely. He thought, I cannot do this. I simply cannot do this. And I got a call. I'm giving you no time to prep. Can you talk on the mythologies of the world to 800 people? And can you do it fairly quickly? It was always ad hoc stuff like that, although the writing was a little bit different. The writing was extension courses across the river in Cambridge, here in Massachusetts. And that was a blast. I did that quite a bit, and would be happy to do. I should do more of that on BookTube. I should do more AuthorTube, more writing-related videos on BookTube. Let's see here. Deep in the Read says, congratulations. I really got hooked on your channel thanks to March of the Penguins series, where you feature one book per video and gave it your thoughts on it. Really invigorated me to seek out many of the books mentioned. My question is, would you consider bringing back that kind of video? I'd love to see more videos spotlighting specific books, whether you love it or hate it, well-known or obscure. It's a popular request. People very much want go through the books of the Western canon, whether it's Penguin or anything else. Go do a follow-up to the Western canon starter kit. Something like that. About canonical works, there are plenty of them that I didn't cover for the Daily Penguin. I definitely think about it. I know, knowing that all of you want it makes me think about it. Doom Antidote. Number one, how do you think Duck's Newburyport will fare over time? I personally thought it was, dare I say it, a masterpiece. So did I. And defines the pre-COVID Trump era perfectly, but it feels like it's been being forgotten already. Well, yes, it is being forgotten already, but that raises a larger question that I've brought up on this channel before, which is, how do books stay remembered? How do they stay remembered? There are only a handful of ways that they do, and most of them involve academia. Duck's Newburyport is a work of contemporary fiction that's 1,000 pages long. It's not going to be taught in academia. So, when this current print run, the run that this author got, when it is done, the publisher, I think, is extremely unlikely to keep the book in print, which means that in 5 years you won't see it in bookstores. In 5 years it won't, an ebook might be available on Amazon, but the big paperback won't be. I don't see it getting added to schools. I don't see it ever entering the Library of America or anything like that, and that happens to lots of books. They just disappear. I think you're entirely right. Duck's Newburyport scored very highly on the only year-end literary list that matters, which is my own. But, yeah, people don't talk about it. It's a book from a few years ago. I could go through a long, long list of those. Elliot Perlman's written 2 that are really good. You could easily hold your head up with pride at being an author, having written either of those 2 books. No one thinks about them anymore. They're not in bookstores. You'd have to find one used and wonder about it. It's weird to me. I wish there were a better way. I guess what I'm saying is I wish our retail bookstores were better. But I guess some of the fault is with the publishers as well. But you have a second question, right? For the love of God, when is the Western Canon 2.0 coming? Yes. Well, you're the foremost voice for that. And I do think about it. I absolutely do think about it, to go back to the Western Canon and use the same time periods, but talk about different books from those time periods. I will give it more thought. I will return to the subject and see. It seems to be popular. Jack Ivoniuk says, congratulations on 14K. What do you make of books like Trans by Helen Joyce, Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, and Material Girls by Kathleen Stock? Are you trying to get me in trouble here? Is that what you're trying to do? Let's see. Are they legitimate criticisms of an ideology? You've read the books, I assume. If you're mentioning them, you know already that they're legitimate. They are completely legitimate. You might not agree with them. People on Twitter might not agree with them, but there's no way to deny their legitimacy. No way at all, especially not Helen Joyce. There's no way to deny the legitimacy of that book. Are they misguided and uninformed takes on something the authors don't fully understand? Are they outright hateful pieces of lies? There's no hate in any of those books. No, not agreeing with someone is not hating them. I know that in 2023 that's lost, but that's still true. Something in between or a combination thereof. Would love to hear your thoughts. Well, I think you could probably guess my thoughts already, and I don't think you're trying to get me in trouble. These books are bringing up the question of why in 1930 and in 1940 and in 1950 and in 1960 and in 1990 and in the year 2000 and in the year 2010, why in all of those times, what's known as body dysmorphia was a very rare and very grave medical malfunction of the body that happened to a tiny fraction of the population, less than 1/100%. And that now the activists on Twitter are telling us that it's 30% of the population and that it always has been. That is clearly false. That is clearly false. And because this has become some sort of weird social banner, there's a huge amount of freight involved in even questioning what is clearly false or clearly true on this subject. It will get you fired. Simply questioning it will get you fired, which has had the predictable stifling effect on the very scientific disciplines that would examine this. Years ago, there was a patient who came to Mass General. He was a man. They are always men. And he was absolutely sure that one of his legs was dead and gangrenous. We don't have any way to read minds, but he said it looked gangrenous when he looked at it. He refused to wash it. He refused to do anything with it. And he limped so that he wouldn't have to put any weight on it. And he came to Mass General Hospital and requested that that leg be amputated. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. It was a healthy leg. And the doctors refused. They refused to do it. Instead, they got him psychological help for what was body dysmorphia, a clear case of body dysmorphia, where his internal felt reality about what his body is like felt wrong to him. He was 100% certain of it, but he was in error. If you don't believe that 30% of young people, which is the numbers that are reported in some high schools and elementary schools, by the students themselves, who are at an age when they are unbelievably vulnerable to faddish thinking. If you don't believe that the numbers reported in those scenarios, 30%, sometimes 50%, are real, if you don't believe those numbers are real, if you don't believe that would translate to, 51 million American children have body dysmorphia when in 1930 and 1920 and 1940 and 1950 and 1960, not 1 million, one kid in America had genuine body dysmorphia. If you don't believe those numbers, then you have to think something else is going on. Good luck trying to examine it. Good luck, a little social experiment that you could do, especially I would pick irreversible damage here. If you want to see how badly and how widely this rot has spread, first of all, see if your bookstore has a copy of Irreversible Damage. It won't. But if it does, bring it to the counter to check out and see if it gets a reaction. And I bet it will. But more likely your bookstore won't have a copy, and then you would have to go to the information desk and request an order. See what happens. It is obvious that something is going on here. I myself think I know. When presented with those differences in acceptance rates, Twitter activists will say, well, it was penalized in all of those earlier decades that you mentioned, and it's not anymore. Which doesn't really go along with, save trans kids or whatever. If it's not penalized, then it's not penalized. And if it is, then it is. But the advocates will say, it used to be that it was socially stigmatized, and now it's not so much anymore, and that's giving people the freedom to come forward. Sometimes the percentages are as high as 50 or 60% in some classrooms. That is absurd. That is absolutely absurd. That is clearly not true. And if we disregard percentages like that, you start to ask, what about the smaller percentage of people who are not children and who are absolutely dead set certain? Anyway, those are some of my thoughts. This is of course a radioactive subject, so let's just move on. Denisa Dellinger says, you are one of the few people who makes reading mail an event. Oh, thank you. Not lately. I don't open mail on camera anymore. Congratulations for reaching 14K. You put in the work and you reap the benefits. Well, I'm sure that's meant as very affirming, but let's be honest here. I don't put in any work. And I don't know how much of a benefit it is that I now have 400 people to send books to. But I get your point, and I appreciate it. No question, I'll let other people have mine. Oh, no question. Orthia NZ, 14K, congratulations, knew it would happen. I didn't. I was sure that it wouldn't happen. They were going down. They were going in the right direction. But anyway, during my trip planning to London and Scotland last year, I came across stories of Overturned Bridge in Scotland. Oh, right, yes, the dog suicide bridge. And numerous reports of dogs falling or jumping off the bridge. There are no reports of them falling. They run to the edge and jump. Dogs typically don't fall. But, what is your thoughts on this? Why do you think it's happening? My instant thought was Steve would know. Well, I've been there, and it's obviously not something, completely categorical, because what stories about this bridge leave out is how many dogs walk across it every day without having any reaction at all. So it's something, I would guess, it's scent related, obviously. It's not, if you're wondering if I'm going to say it's supernatural, there's nothing supernatural about this bridge. And know how I know that? Because there's nothing supernatural. Period. Full stop. Not about anything, not here, not on this subject. There's nothing supernatural. Full stop. So there's nothing supernatural about this bridge. It has to be scent. That it has to be something like that. An overwhelming something like that. that does it. Also, I would love to. Quite a few of the dogs that have jumped off this bridge have lived. I'd love to see. I'd love to talk with a couple of them. I would know in an instant. If there are many testimonials owners that their dogs were badly bruised by jumping, but they survived. What I would love to do is find one of those dogs, meet one of those dogs, talk to one of those dogs away from that dog's owners, and then take that dog to the bridge myself without the owners, without the humans that usually deal with it. I would know in a heartbeat what was going on there. But I've never done that, and I never will. So let's see here. Matt Sheridan. Hello, Father Steve. I just got back from Saturday Mass and heard the wonderful news that you reached 14K. Mass on a Saturday. Good Lord. Break out the wine and calzones. Yes. At the time of the filming of this Q&A, I have a guest. We have been breaking out the wine and calzones quite a bit. My question is, with St. Patrick's Day approaching, would it be possible for you to do a starter kit on Irish literature or perhaps Irish history? Haven't I done one on Irish literature? I could have sworn I have. They're both really good subjects. Would it be just totally hokey if I did one or both of those on St. Patrick's Day? I'm not against being totally hokey, so maybe I'll do that. Oh, then Matt Sheridan ends with the traditional Irish toast, l'chaim. Thank you very much. Tanya, hello. I am a relatively new subscriber to your channel, and I think you have the best recommendations and the best way of compelling people to read them. I really trust your recs and have even been watching a couple of your non-bookish life advice videos. You're the grandpa I did not get a chance to have in real life. Tanya, that is amazingly nice. That is amazingly nice. Thank you. My question, if you're comfortable, could you share a bit about yourself and how you came to be so interested in all these books? Basically, the route life has taken you down. Well, I've mentioned it on this channel, but you're new, so you might not have seen it because you have 6,000 videos to watch. I had one teacher. I had one special teacher. I was not at all bookish. I was not at all literary. I had very disdainful opinions of both bookish people and books. And then I had one teacher who opened my eyes to how incredible books are, to how reading is the ultimate adventure. It requires more courage than climbing up a mountain. It's the ultimate adventure. And once that, well, if any of you have had that kind of a teacher, once that happens, that's done. It's a fantastic gift. I can never repay it. But I do my best. I do my best to at least pay it forward. Booked In says, hi, Steve. Congrats on reaching 14K. I'm a very recent subscriber. Another recent subscriber. I realize you may have covered my question in earlier videos and don't expect a response. Oh, calm down. Calm down. I respond to everybody. I guarantee you somewhere in this list is the Spaminator, my own personal supervillain. If I'm going to respond to him, I'm going to respond to you. But I would be interested in a short version of your biography. Oh, the same kind of thing. As a reader. Something you've said gave me the impression that you have worked within the book industry, or something closely related, teaching maybe. If I've deduced correctly, it would be interesting to know a couple of things your work taught you in relation to books, writing, and reading. Never in the book industry. Teaching I have done. But what I do is book criticism. I'm a book reviewer. So I know all about the book industry, but my relationship with it is not working inside it. It is working against it. I am adversarial to it. It wants your time, your attention, and your money. Those are very valuable things, and I want to make sure that the books they're putting forward, asking for those things, are worth it. And I have been doing that for a long, long time. And you mentioned a couple of things that your work has taught you in relation to books. I really do believe that being a critical book reviewer for a long, long time makes me a better reader. And in my case, a more passionate reader. Some of you over the years have mentioned, well, critical reading sounds dry to me. It sounds like it would suck the life out of reading. And I hate to say it, but some of my critical brethren, some other book reviewers, it has become a chore. They don't really like to do it at all. I know some reviewers, including one who is a fairly prominent reviewer, who dogmatically, insistently does not bring any reading material on vacation. Oh my, that's my job. No, I'll just stare at the sunset or whatever. But it doesn't happen to me. That has not happened to me, nor ever come close. Books for Eric says, congrats, Steve. Now on to 15K. Do you mind? Do you mind? What are your thoughts on AI-generated writing? I'm fascinated by the whole subject. Absolutely fascinated. Do you look forward to reading full-fledged books composed by AI? I feel absolutely certain I have already done that. on the more formulaic ends of the bookish spectrum, I feel certain that I have done that. Business motivation books, how to motivate your team, how to be the captain of your life, Christian inspiration memoirs, Jesus is my master, God changed my life. If you're a publishing house and you have want a nice healthy list of titles every season, those things can already be written by AI. Maybe have a human superintending the end results just a bit. I feel certain that I have, but I know that I will. I think right now anyway, my stance is that if it isn't written by a person, I don't see why I would review it. But I could easily see that thought changing, because whether it's written by a human being or not, we'll leave aside whether or not an AI is a person. Whether or not it's written by a human being, it's still demanding your time, your attention, and your money, so it still might require me. Maybe the author is totally irrelevant, something that I have been saying in literary gatherings in Brooklyn for quite some time. Randy L. Ray has a barrage of questions. Number one, I know you've said you don't need much sleep. How many hours of sleep do you get per night? Hours, plural? It's not many. I get a little more sleepy when I'm not feeling well, and I get a little more sleepy when I'm drunk. But ordinarily I just sail through on very little. Number two, I've heard you mention that you read 150 pages an hour for about 10 hours a day. How many books do you read per year at that rate? I'm guessing between 1,000 and 2,000, which dwarfs most people's numbers. It is indeed between 1,000 and 2,000, and it only dwarfs most people's numbers because most people have lots of other things that they do. They have jobs. They have personal hygiene. They wear pants. Aside from this little thing right here up on her seat, looking at the world, I do very little other than read. And if you did the same thing, if all your life was devoted to that, you'd start to rack up pretty big numbers too. Question number three, how many book reviews do you write per year? I don't really know. Probably around 300 or 400. Well, no, it isn't. No, I'm sorry. It's not 300 or 400. It's 700 or 800. Because in addition to the reviews that I do that are signed, I also write reviews for the industry journals. Right? There's a handful of advanced industry journals, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Library Review, a library journal, that get books ahead of time and write short, pro forma, unsigned book reviews of those for the industry, for people at college bookstores or libraries or whatever. They get advance word about those books, and that helps to inform their buying decisions. And I do one of those a day. So the number goes up. So the number's pretty high. Let's see here. Seriously, congrats. I've thoroughly enjoyed your channel for over a year now. Oh my, wonderful. Tyler, number one, I love the Daily Penguin series. Here we are at the Daily Penguin again. Would you consider bringing back a feature like that, but more centered around major authors, whether you would recommend them and their greatest works? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, either the Western Canon 2.0 or I don't even know, a tour through the canon, major and minor, or something like that. It's clear that you all want that, and I would love to do it. So, and number two, how long did it take you to stop sub-vocalizing? I never did. If a nubile wanted to... I'm assuming that's an autocorrect typo. I'm assuming you meant newbie there. Or... well, I mean, who am I to assume perhaps you are nubile? If a nubile wanted to, I'm of course going to read it that way. I don't get questions like this very often. Wanted to unlock this feature, how long would it take, and is there some sort of process you'd recommend? How long it will take some time. You learn to sub-vocalize when you learn to read. Your reading went from people reading stories to you reading stories to yourself, all out loud. And that naturally moved to reading stories silently to yourself. So this is one of the oldest reading habits that you have. So you have to cut yourself some slack. It's going to take some time to uproot it. But as to how, there's no real way to describe how to do it because I'm not inside your brain. But the key thing to how is for you to realize that you already do a lot of reading without sub-vocalizing. You already do a lot of that. What you want to do is, in your own mind, feel what it's like to do that non-sub-vocalizing reading. When you get a form in the mail, if you get a letter about how your insurance company came down on one side or another of decision, you do not sub-vocalize that letter. You don't sub-vocalize flashing street signs or the signs on a highway. You don't sub-vocalize those things. There's plenty of stuff that you don't sub-vocalize. The labels on the back of cereal boxes, you don't do it. then. It's largely associated with books in your mind because it's artificial. So what you want to do is read a book like that. Just try to do it like that. We're just seeing the words, not sounding out anything. And you're going to experience, well, everybody that tries this, they always tell me the same thing, that it slowed them down a lot when I was promising that it would speed them up a lot, and that they lost a lot. There was a lot that they weren't catching. That is just because the habit is new. That's all. Those two things will change. You just have to give it time. That's all. Let's see here. Congrats on 14K. Can't imagine how you'll answer all these questions, especially when you get to 15K. We are not getting to 15K. We are not getting there. Jason Carmichael. Congrats, Steve, on 14K. Thanks for all the bookish content. What are some of your favorite literary movie adaptations? Quite a few of them have been inflicted on my guest the last few days. Well, the number one is the James Goldman wrote a play called The Lion in Winter, and it was made into a movie, and it's my favorite movie. But lots of others are as well. Lots and lots. We were watching clips from Peter Shaffer's Amadeus. Jean Anlou's play Beckett was made into a movie that I thought was really good. There are two really good adaptations of 12 Angry Men. Cornelius Ryan wrote a history called A Bridge Too Far. That title of that book has entered into the common parlance as a piece of normal English use. You know the phrase, even if you don't know where it's from and you haven't read the book. It was made into a fantastic movie. And so on and so forth. All the way down the line. From, Jaws to, you name it. But all-time favorites, The Lion in Winter, Beckett, things like that. Historical stuff like that. Also, A Man for All Seasons. But now that I'm noticing that, these are all coming from plays, not from books. That's worth thinking about. Well, like everybody else, I love Field of Dreams. Right? That comes from a book. But anyway, let's see here. DDB says, well done on 14K. We're halfway to your age. I'm after a Steve D recommend from the prison genre category. It can be fiction or nonfiction, but preferably set in America and after World War II. Well, I definitely recommend Ted Conover's book, New Jack, which is in the prison genre. It's about being a guard at Sing Sing. I definitely recommend it. It is really, really good. It is extremely grim. Extremely grim. And it was written decades ago. The American prison system has only gotten more dysfunctional since then, but it's really good. So you start with that. Marcelo Silva, congratulations, Steve. It is always nice to have great news. I would like to ask, how did you keep having curiosity and positive enthusiasm towards the world? Why do people in their 60s and 70s tend to lose that same curiosity? Usually they start to say that they do not read new books, not visit new places, new museums. Oh my, Marcelo. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. I don't actually know what the answer to why is, but I noticed it right away. I noticed it decades ago. And I don't accept it. I'm not like that myself. I hope I never get like that myself. And the result has been, well, I've mentioned it on this channel many times. The result is that when it comes to socializing, when it comes to just hanging out, I much prefer to socialize with younger people. Just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Occasionally I will get a hate bot comment about what that makes me. I disregard them because most of the people who are older than that are incredibly boring. They're incredibly boring. They have stopped living. And who wants to hang? I'm supposed to voluntarily subject myself to that kind of absence of company just because of a date on a calendar? No. No, I would much rather torment and bore young people than be tormented and bored by older people. Let's see here. Sulika says, I am so enjoying your daily talks about Tolkien's Two Towers this month. Yes. I really, really enjoy doing a chapter a day of the Two Towers. And I am going to do that, Return of the King, but I have a guest. It's not stopping me from making these Q&A videos, but I will return to the Return of the King as soon as, the dust has settled and all the laundry's been done and everything like that. But you had a question, I'm sure. Apart from Lord of the Rings, I haven't read any other books in this genre. Can you give me any recommendations? Congratulations on 14K subscribers. It is well deserved. Is it? Is it really? I don't think it is. Well, when it comes to other books in the genre, it's a large amount of it is going to depend on how much of Tolkien you want to read in those books. Tolkien set the mold. You could read The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany. That came before Lord of the Rings and is brilliant. But most of the epic fantasies that came after are very much in the Tolkien mode, is the nice way to put it. We could be talking about just lazy plagiarism. And the extent of your toleration for that will determine which of those later series you really like. A lot of them are really good, even though they are totally leaning on Tolkien, like the Eye of the World series by Robert Jordan or the Belgariad by David Eddings. And there are a whole bunch of others that are very similar to Tolkien in a lot of ways. They usually have pretty soft magic systems. They're usually set in a kind of quasi-medieval rural time period. Horse-drawn carriages, but never railways or gunpowder or electricity. There's usually a talisman of some kind that's imbued with horrible evil and that needs to be destroyed. All of that stuff is, I believe, the affectionate reading is that those authors read Lord of the Rings and loved it and just wanted to contribute, wanted to an homage to show their love. And you can go to any of those series. It'll depend on, if you read the first or two books in any of those series and think, well, I should just read Tolkien again, well, then maybe you should, and then move on to things that are much, much more inventive. I can feel free to email me. I'd be happy to give you specifics once you do that. Start with something simple. Start with Lloyd Alexander or David Eddings. Start with something like that and see if it appeals to you and why it does. Does it appeal to you because it's echoing Tolkien or because it's a variation on a theme? And then we can go from there. Let's see here. Bren BJ, congrats, Steve. Discovering your channel has been a revelation and a joy. Oh my. Never thought I'd find a fellow 28-year-old who was as obsessed with books as me and who has also spent as much time at sea and who also knows miniature schnauzers. Do you have a miniature schnauzer? I was wondering why you don't seem to have many books in other languages. How often do you read Latin, French, Spanish, etc.? Do you find your facility in those other languages gets rusty? Do you have a whole secret annexified cottage full of books in other languages that you don't talk about on the channel? Best wishes from Holland. No, once I became firmly ensconced in the American book world as a critic and then a reviewer or a bookseller and then a critic again, the American book world is so huge that, yeah, I have let foreign language reading drop off drastically. I have a bit of a facility for languages, so they don't get rusty as fast with me as they would with most people, and Latin doesn't get rusty at all. And I do have books here in Latin, but almost none. You're right, almost none. Every once in a while, I will encounter something that is a massive, massive temptation. A book that is in a language I can read, that is not in English, and that has not yet been translated and may never be. That is massively tempting. Sometimes I give in to that. Sometimes there's just no way. And those are scattered. Those books are scattered around here. But steadily reading books in other languages when I can't even keep up with the American book market. The number one temptation for that actually comes from Holland right now. Because in your bookstores right now, you have a biography of Erasmus. And I have not pursued, it's in Dutch. I don't read Dutch. I could probably make my way through it, but I wouldn't be enjoying it. I'd be fighting with the language the whole time. And I have not examined whether or not that book has translation deals. It wouldn't have to make it all the way to America. It wouldn't have to. If it gets a German language translation, then I would be fine. I would be okay with that. I don't know that it's ever going to get an English language translation for America. I really doubt that. Although, I could be wrong. American publishers seem more adventurous along those lines. I mean, M, Son of the Century, is the first volume in a trilogy, and it's 800 pages about Mussolini, and it got translated. So it could very well be. Anyway, let's move on here. A Fit Nerd, congratulations on 14K. A few questions. Number one, is the original Jason Bourne trilogy by Robert Ludlum worth reading? It's pretty sloggy. It's worth reading if you love thrillers, and especially if you've been, sort of turned off by the very weak, watery later Ludlum, then yeah. But if you love thrillers, I could make a lot of recommendations that would be better than it's going to take you time to slog through those Bourne books, and they aren't worth it. Number two, does the new Kindle Scribe interest you? No, No, it does not. Uh, I love watching videos about it, including videos from like uh, MJ or Ollie, who went out and got the thing. But it doesn't interest me for a whole bunch of reasons. Number one, it's first gen technology, and even though it's Amazon, those are going to be buggy. I've made that mistake a few times. There's a cabinet that is full of tech here that was first gen because it seemed irresistible to me that I don't use. I don't have the patience to the wherewithal to update it or upgrade it or whatever. But also, uh, well, first of all, I have a ton of e-readers and also iPad minis that I read on. So I don't need another e-reader. And I wouldn't use the Kindle Scribe for anything else, for anything other than e-reading. And that would mean that I would be paying $500 and using $100 worth of the device because it's a note-taking, it's a drawing, it's just all sorts of things that I wouldn't use it for. So it doesn't tempt me at all, no. And you had another question, yes? And 3, would you recommend Peter F. Hamilton or Alistair Reynolds for someone venturing into hard sci-fi for the first time? God, no. God, no. They're good. They're really good, but I would no more recommend them for a first-timer than I would recommend that, got a weekend in New York? How about trying the marathon? No. No, they're the things you read when you know that you not only like this stuff, but love it. I would recommend David Hartwell's anthology, a big fat anthology called The Ascent of Wonder, which is an anthology of hard science fiction through time. Tons and tons of great people in there. David Hartwell is a great editor. And from that anthology, you will learn a lot of the different tenors of hard science fiction and who you like. You'll learn authors that you like from that anthology. But even if you don't do that, I wouldn't recommend either of these. Try Ringworld first before you do anything like that. Then Sid says, congrats, Steve. You probably get a lot of requests to continue your Western Canon Stargate. Yes, just in this Q&A. What do you think about continuing it, but mainly focusing on your personal favorites for every time period this time around? You can call it Western Canon Starter Kit Part 2. This time it's personal. Well, they're all my favorites, almost. Not Plato, but a lot of them are. But obviously I need to revisit that idea, and it should happen in 2023. I will give it serious thought. Bren BJ says, can't help myself. I have a couple more burning questions for BookTube's Super Hottie. Number 1, have you ever met someone who has read as much as you? Yes. Number 2, what was that encounter like? It involved wine and calzones. Number 3, what book have you reread most times, and how many times is that? Oh my! Well, I don't have numbers, but there's a lot. There's a lot of them. I don't know how many times I've read Horace, for instance. I don't know how many times I've read Catullus. I just have no idea no idea how many times I've read Dante. But on the other side of the spectrum, I don't have any idea how many times I've read a couple of Star Trek novels that I just reread compulsively. I reread them all the time. The numbers would be pretty high. We're talking about many dozens of times. I go back to books. I'm a big rereader, so I go back to books a lot. Let's see here. How are we doing for? Oh, goodness gracious, we're well past 30 minutes here. Let's move on to another video.